It sucks. Hashtag fail. Failure is not good. Failure is alright. Failure is. It just is. And that's something that's very difficult to actually come to terms with. This was a video that was come off the back of a couple of requests to look at this idea of failure. When you break it down, failure means that our model of the world is wrong, and that can feel really scary and unsafe. I thought that if I did this, this would happen. If I can get to this outcome, then I can feel safe. There was a friend who recently talked about his experience with failure and this idea of, I just can't do that again. Like, I just can't put myself out there again, which I think is a really common experience for lots of people. I put in all of this effort and I expected this thing to happen as a result of that effort. That was a lot of energy, a lot of effort, and the reward wasn't there at the end of it. I worked through these unconscious things myself in regards to big projects, and noticed where the first ever big project that I did really kind of fail. It didn't meet the expectation that I had of all of the work that I was putting into it. We're focusing on one particular point of the process of what it is that we're doing. I remember noticing this most notably when I was competing. So I'd had this training camp that was about 3 months long, and it was hard, and I was tired a lot. There's this thing of, well, glory lasts forever, and it's like, it really doesn't. Because I remember training for this thing and getting to the fight and winning the fight in a really spectacular fashion. God, it was so good at the start. It was such an elated feeling. Even after the fight, I was tired. I wanted to go to sleep, but I went to bed and woke up the next morning and remember just thinking, like, is this it? I did all of this just for this little moment here. And so there's something to be said in our relationship with the attachment to the outcome, what that outcome could mean for us. I think that I can be safe once this happens. It could be other things that you want to feel, but ultimately, whenever this response to failure kicks in, like the fight response, like, fuck this, I'm gonna burn the whole thing to the ground, or the flight response, like, I don't ever want to see that again, or just the shutdown response, like this sense of helplessness, I can't do anything. All of these states that create these narratives about what's going on all come from this sense of a feeling of loss. I had this thing in mind, it didn't happen. You know, that future never actually existed, but I have to break up now with that expectation. I have to break up with my fantasy of what things would be like. That's a very, very painful thing. Like, we like our dreams, you know, we like our imaginations, and we treat them as if they're real. Being able to hold that dream and listen to it, but also be in the moment of what we're doing. If you're dancing, you're not dancing to get to the end of the song. If you're playing music, you're playing music for the joy of playing music. You know, if I'm drawing, maybe I want to get to the finished piece, but really once the piece is finished, then it's done. I didn't do it for that. I did it because I was enjoying the process of doing this thing. I think it's a good marker whenever we're not enjoying the process of doing something, but doing it to get the specific end result, then perhaps we're not calibrated around the thing in a way that's going to make failure not just tolerable, but actually sustainable. As in, I don't care that I failed. I don't care that that didn't happen, because that's not why I did it. So there is like a bit of a tension between these two ideas of, I want to be in it for the process and to enjoy and be present with the process and enjoy the process. And then if the end result comes, then great, I'll take it. I'll take this end result. But if it doesn't come, I didn't waste my time. I think there is also something in being able to shift perception from, well, I failed, what does that say about my worth as a human being? What are all of these stories that it brings up about me? So there's this concept, growth mindset, was popularized by Carol Dweck in the book Mindset. Good title. Growth mindset is, if I keep putting in effort, I will succeed at something eventually. Fixed mindset is something more along the lines of, if I failed, that means I don't have the ability. Oh no, that means that that's not for me, I can't do it. There's something in the middle of all of this that is, it might be hard sometimes, but it feels deeply meaningful to do this. Like, the meaning is the thing that's going to sustain me, and I'll fail and fail again and fail again, and each of those times is like, well, there's never going to be a wave that just lasts forever and ever and ever. So in that regard, You look at nature, like everything fails. Ultimately, that's the trajectory that everything is on. So it's not so much a question of, am I going to fail? It's more a question of, is this failing an end, or is it a transformative process into something else? So much of it is our ability to roll with that. Maybe in my mind I didn't quite achieve the result that I wanted to achieve, but what did that actually give me that transformed into something else? So we're going to have a little look at some of this stuff today and see if we can't release a bit of that tension around failure and look at the stories that it might bring up about what it means for us personally and what it could mean ultimately. So take a moment, find a comfortable position wherever you're at. Oh. Notice what you're bringing today, what's showing up in the body, what's here, what do you feel? I always start to train in these noticing practices because we just want to be aware of what's there in the body. That's like our starting point. Start from where you are, rather than where you want to be, because that place isn't real. You want to be in reality. You want to be grounded. You want to be dealing with reality as it is, rather than stuck in the delusion of what you would want it to be. So we're not looking at the stories about reality as if they were true, but we're looking at the stories about reality as being there. That's a reality. It doesn't mean that because I think it is true, but it does mean that it's true that I'm thinking it. It's easy to get afraid of thinking a certain thing in case it might be true, so we avoid thinking about it, but then we avoid dealing with what's actually there. But just looking at thoughts in themselves can help you to dismantle and disempower really the pull and the influence that they have over you. So we want to look at the reality of, there are some thoughts that are actually here, and those thoughts are placeholders for feelings which might feel a bit uncomfortable, and because I don't want to feel the uncomfortable feeling, I can never make contact with it, and because I can never make contact with it, I can never allow it to pass through. It's all connection work, this. Connection first, and then letting that connection transform things into what it needs to be. So reality is based in the senses, the sensations in the body, sensations, failure. Notice the word failure. Drop that word into your body, failure, and just see what kind of ripples it creates. See what kind of feeling immediately comes up to meet it. And that's the first feeling we're going to work with. So tapping around the chest. Failure. Thinking of the word failure. Just tapping on the points, noticing what it means to you. Notice the intensity of the feeling around the word failure. When you think the word failure, is there a high level of intensity with it? What would that intensity be on a scale of 0 to 10? 0 being it's not intense at all, 10 being it's way too much. Failure. Thinking about this word failure. For myself, I get an image, an image of a crying, almost like it's almost like an archetypal caricature of somebody wailing, failing. It's like this, there's a real sense of sadness, I think, coming up through that imagery, and a sense of loss and a sense of grief. So I'm just looking at all of that and then noticing my reaction to that sense of loss and that sense of grief. And actually being here with that as well, noticing that sense of loss, sense of grief. All this failure. It's almost too much. don't know how to handle this much failure. I don't know how to handle these feelings. There's way too many feelings. It's too overwhelming. It doesn't feel safe. Could be a sense of grief. Could be a feeling of humiliation. Could be a sense of loss. Whatever it is, it feels dangerous. And I don't want to experience that. Because it feels dangerous. And so quite rightly, my system is trying to protect me from that. Maybe it's mobilizing anger. Maybe it's mobilizing anxiety. Or maybe it's shutting down completely. Either which way. All these feelings I connect to failure. It's a big one for me. None of them feel safe. None of them feel safe at all. And that's the reality of where I'm at. It doesn't feel okay to fail. If I fail, something really bad's going to happen. And that reminds me of, think about here something that reminds you of. Maybe there's a particular incident you have in mind. You failed at some point in your childhood and that meant something really bad. But whatever the incident is if there's something there that just springs to mind, just let it bubble up from the unconscious. This incident was really painful. And I developed all these ideas about failure. And I never want to go back there again. And I'm glad my system can feel motivated and tries to protect me in these ways. And maybe it's tried to shame me. Maybe the failure was so intense that there was a very real threat that I could have been kicked out of the tribe. That people wouldn't have accepted me. That the consequences would have been that bad. Or at least that's what it felt like at the time. Or maybe I just wouldn't have accepted myself. And maybe I learned that in that situation, the best way forward was to separate myself from this part. And get angry at this part. And try to bully and shame it into submission. In the hope that that would eventually motivate it to change. want to be open to a different way. Anger, shame, and coercion can work in the short term, but there's really no long-term sustainability in using these tactics, especially when it comes to myself. So all the shame and pain of failure, that I've accrued over the years, and all these parts of myself that I've rejected, all these parts of myself that I've abandoned, and all these feelings that I've turned away from, and the intense amount of grief and loss that that's caused. I might be willing to reconnect with those feelings. It might not have felt safe back then, but I don't want to keep carrying the tension of having to fight the feelings that I'm feeling. I want to liberate the energy held by those parts. By offering them some kind of acceptance. Because it's so tiring fighting against my failures. It's so tiring chastising myself. It's so tiring having my system activated. And carrying all of this survival stress. And the truth is, right here, right now, if I'm doing this video, whatever happened before, I managed to survive. And it might not have looked exactly how I wanted it to look, but I'm still breathing. And I'm still here. And maybe I'm willing to break up with all of my delusions and fantasies about how it could have been. And maybe I can actually feel all of the feelings that I only thought I could feel if all of my fantasies came true. Maybe I could let myself feel that right now. All of those feelings of safety, all of those feelings of accomplishment, that ability to relax. What if I'd imagined that I'd achieved the thing already? What do I think that's actually going to give me in terms of a feeling state? Maybe it's some sense of peace of mind. Or that I might finally be good enough. And what if I was good enough already? What if I was willing to acknowledge that? Maybe there are specific contexts where I might need to do a bit better. But that general, vague, good enough feeling, what if I let myself have that now? What if I actually put my energy towards believing that? Perhaps then that would inspire the action. That would make that reality real. So rather than outsourcing all of my energy and all of my good feelings to some imaginary future point, that I might never actually reach, what if I let myself have all that right now? Maybe I'd be worried about losing motivation. Maybe then I'd have nothing to strive for. But I wonder if that's actually true. If I wasn't motivated by fear, but actually inspired by love. Deep levels of acceptance for myself. Deep levels of acceptance for where I am right now. Even though it hasn't looked like my mind wanted it to. Maybe there is a deeper adventure at play. And my interest and curiosity could help that adventure unfold in a much more joyful and sustainable way. So I'm willing to be here right now and release any remaining survival stress around the word failure. And that doesn't mean I have to force myself to think differently. It just means acknowledging where I'm at. And being willing and open to do things a different way. Willing and open to adopt beginner's mind. And get some joy from the journey. And actually find my flow state in doing what I'm doing, rather than just some outcome. Because actually that's when I feel best. When I'm in flow. And I lose all sense of time. I want more of that. And then the outcome becomes irrelevant. because I'm just dancing for the joy of dancing. I'm playing music because I love it. I'm not obsessed with trying to get to the end of the song. Because I'm just doing what I love. And that's what I want to orient around. And if I keep doing that, sure, I'm going to play bad notes. I'm going to make missteps. But all of that's fine. Because I'll still be consumed by the joy of the song. Okay, hand on belly, hand on chest. Take a breath. Take two. Notice what you feel in your body now, and drop the word failure in there again, and see if there's any shift in the feelings that evokes. Does it feel safer to fail now? Is there any kind of, has the intensity risen or gone down? And don't worry if it has risen. Actually, it's really more about getting stuff moving. The body knows what to do, how to process this. It's just a case of us being present with the stuff that's there and just letting it naturally, organically compost and decompose and fail and become something new. We're looking to have our old beliefs about failure fail themselves, because they're not in that harmonic with the flow of life, and that's something that we're really all looking for when we're doing anything, is that flow state. And so aiming towards that is something that is a very, very different way of being in the world than if you're aiming towards just specific outcomes. All right, hopefully that was useful to you. Let me know, comments, feedback, if there's anything that caught your attention, or if there's anything that you want me to cover in the next videos. And yeah, go forth and fail righteously, enjoy all of that, and I'll see you in the next video.